I'm out here at the Washington coast and I have these Maven filters for your camera that I'm testing out, and I have a bunch of different ones. So I have all of the ND filters, some of the NDs with CPLs, and then some variable grads as well that we're gonna test out. But right now, all I'm doing is I'm trying to line up a shot with some of the rocks in the foreground and then the sea stacks in the background. And then I'm gonna put on one of these filters and see if I can get a nice milky finish. So the cool thing about these Maven filters is they are magnetic. So you put on an adapter on the front of your lens and then boom, now your filter is ready to rock and roll. So as you can see right now, it is way too dark. So we gotta drop the exposure way down. And this is a 10 stop. So right now in the middle of the day, I can get a 4-second exposure. We're going to focus towards the middle here. And if this is any good, I'll post it. So in my opinion, the sky is blown out just a little bit. So I'm gonna attach one of these half grads onto the front as well to try and lower the exposure on the sky. So you can easily stack filters. They're all magnetized, and then you can make adjustments as needed. So now I'm able to expose a little brighter for my foreground without completely blowing out the sky. And now let's see if this is any better. So I don't know if you can see that on the screen there, but the exposure looks much better, and it'll be easier to edit with this now that I have more detail in the sky and I can brighten up the foreground as well. Okay, so I wanted a little longer exposure, so I slapped a 2ND on here, and then I have the 10ND with CPL, and then I have the half gradient there. So that gives me, I can do a 30-second exposure. And now it looks like I have a lot of detail across the entire image. The water is smoothed out, and now I have some motion blur in the sky as well, which I really like that. It'll be a lot easier to see it on the big screen, so let's go in and take a look at it, and I will show you some of my processing that I would do to this image. All right, I'm back on my computer, so let's see if the filters made any difference with those images. So let's take a look at these images before processing. Right here is the first image, and this is with only one ND filter on. So as you can see, overall, the image is kind of flat. You don't have a whole lot of details up in the sky. There's not much detail in the water here as well. If we drop the highlights, there's not a whole lot going on in the sky. But again, it was just kind of a boring sky that day anyways. We raise the shadows. We do have some details in the rocks here, but we're not getting that creamy, milky water like I was hoping for. Now in the next image, this is where I added the graduated filter on. And as you can see, it definitely darkened up the sky a little bit, which is what I was trying to shoot for because it was a little more blown out in the first image here. So even right here, there's a little bit more contrast in the sky. And if we raise shadows, we're getting a little bit more interesting stuff going on with the water, but still not a whole lot. If you drop the shadows, you raise some of the whites, drop the blacks, just to get yourself into a decent position before you start making other changes to your image. We have a lot more interesting stuff going on with this guy. So if I go back to the other image, do the same thing, drop highlights, raise shadows, I hold Alt and slide the whites to the right until I start getting some to come through, to be a little overexposed. Then I drop the blacks a little bit. Now here is the difference between the two images. I'm liking this guy more in the one with the graduated filter compared to just the ND filter. Still, it's not a fantastic sky, but just working with the conditions that I had, I'm liking this better. And this one was an 8-second exposure. So now we get over to a 25-second exposure. I probably should have exposed a little bit longer. I'm more to the left on my histogram here. I am not blowing anything out at all. But for the most part, it is all inside of the histogram. So we drop the highlights, we raise the shadows, adjust the whites and the blacks. I overdid it on the whites a little bit. There. Now between a 25-second exposure and an 8-second exposure, you can kind of see the difference here. I'm getting more interesting stuff happening with the water. I'm getting more of that milky look going up onto the rocks. As you can see here, as I'm zoomed in, compared to here, you're not getting that nearly as much milkiness going up onto the rocks. The water wasn't really moving that much anyways, which is why I needed the longer exposure. Overall detail is really great on the 25-second and the 8-second. I would say the detail isn't much difference. So the filters aren't impacting image quality, which is great. You don't want it to impact a $2,000 lens quality because of a $100 filter that's on the front. Now, the next one is one I processed already. That's a 30-second exposure. So that one is a little brighter than the 25-second, which is probably what I saw looking at the camera afterwards, that I could go a little bit longer. Again, I probably could have gone maybe 45 seconds, but I didn't. And then after I processed it, dropped highlights, raised shadows, adjusted whites and blacks. And I think on this one I even did some masking. Let me see. So the first mask I did was a linear gradient, and right here it's at the top of my screen. So what I did is I came down and I darkened from the top down a little ways into the sky. So it's just a very slight adjustment. But on the bottom I did another linear gradient, but this time I added in a little contrast. So I went down to my curves adjustment here and I added a little contrast and raised some of the highlights a little tiny bit just to get a little bit more pop to that foreground. And then my third mask here is a radial gradient, and right here all I'm doing is darkening the edges. So I'm making my own vignetting by using the radial gradient. So overall, with just 3 masks, you can really change an image to make it a lot nicer overall. So overall, I would say the scene that I was shooting wasn't fantastic. The water wasn't moving as fast as I would want. The sky wasn't as brilliant as I would want. But just playing around with filters gives you a little bit more depth with those type of images. Otherwise, you're shooting at a higher shutter speed and you're not getting anything interesting happening in the image. Overall, I've been using the Maven filters for like 2 years now, and I've been pretty happy with them. Now, filters can get really expensive, and I've played with Leaf filters and a couple other ones, the cheap filters way back when as well. And overall, I have been really happy with the consistency with the Maven filters. So if it's something that you're interested in checking out, I do have links down in the description. If you click on those links, it does help the channel out a little bit, but it doesn't cost you anything extra. Now, what do you think? Have you used Maven filters before, or have you used any other magnetic filters? Overall, as a photographer that's moving quickly, I like the ability to just snap the magnetic ring on and pop the filters on and off. I'm not a patient person. I like to move fast. I'm typically moving from scene to scene. So any way to cut down time on taking photographs definitely helps me a lot. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and we will see you in the next one.